Hello students, welcome to the lecture series on international business. Today's topic is International Economic Organization Part 3. I am Professor Soma Sen Gupta, Kamla Nehru College, University of Delhi. In this lecture, we will discuss the following topics. The remaining portion of World Trade Organization, that is benefits, impact on developing countries, criticism of WTO. Then we will discuss World Bank, its objectives, activities, membership and the organization structure. Benefits of WTO. First and foremost, it leads to reduction in tariff and non-tariff barriers to international trade and hence smoothening the trade between the different countries. This leads to liberalization of trade as well, that is it increases competition. It leads to efficiency in utilization of resources, productivity and quality. So, best possible utilization of resources can take place when there is liberalization of trade because of reduction in tariff and non-tariff barriers. Other benefits are economic growth of member countries due to liberalization of trade and investment. All the economies who are the members of WTO will grow or envision to grow out of the trade between the countries. Improvement in economic relations between member countries through multilateral discussions. Moreover, a kind of balance is maintained in the global arena as each of the economy is dependent on others and they share the resources or they indulge in buying and selling or trade. Then free and fair trade helps to raise incomes, consumer choice and standard of living. The people of different countries will have more choice because now they can buy commodities made in other economies as well as in their domestic production those who are domestically produced. WTO system encourages good governance as well because the rules have to be followed and fair trading practices have to be followed. Settlement of trade disputes between nations leads to peace in the world. So, WTO helps in settling the disputes or trade disputes between the member nations. Mechanism for dealing with violation of trade agreements is also there. WTO rules and principles make life easier for all, including importers and exporters. Research and dissemination of information about global trade happens between the member nations and all the nations they grow out of that. Member governments are protected from lobbying also. So, any kind of unfair trade practices or lobbying or such practices are avoided if WTO agreements are applied in letter and in spirit. There are certain positive impact of WTO on developing countries and some negative impact. So, we will begin with the positive impact of WTO on developing countries. So, as we have discussed in the benefits that when liberalization of trade happens, all the economies grow. In particular, developing countries also grow because this benefits their people, their organizations, their business organization. How it works? First of all, WTO talks about fair trade. In that, reduction in subsidies take place and this takes place in developing countries also. We will discuss this point in negative impact also. But here in positive sense, what happens when there is a reduction in subsidies in the developing countries, this leads to conservation of resources. So, overuse of resources will not take place. Since if subsidies are provided, then overproduction is production happens and then the resources are overused. So, this can be avoided. Also, there is an increase in exports of food grains. Freedom to use improved seeds also happen and because of that the production, agricultural production also increases in developing countries. Expansion of trade and transfer of technology takes place. Benefits to service sector also happens and because of that the service sector also grows. As different services they open up, the privatization also happens and globalization since it is there, they get the benefit of foreign service providers also. Investment measures improves in developing countries. So, these were the positive impact, but then there are certain negative impact as well. So, when we talk about slashing of down subsidy, we talked about that in positive impact also because it conserves the resources, but on the other hand it hits hard the poor farming class because they will not get the subsidy, so their cost will increase. Branded seeds may fuel existing inequalities in rural areas because only the capitalist farmers will use costly branded seeds, others will resort to the primitive methods and the indigenous seeds only. So, their production will be lesser in comparison to the rich farmers. So, the divide between economic divide between the farmers it increases further because of these branded seeds. Trims and trips, both of them have a negative impact also. So, when we talk about trims, it removes restriction on foreign investments. So, hence domestic industry is marginalized. When we talk about trips, it discourages the progress of research, development and innovation in the developing countries. So, these problems are there because of WTO. So, hence it is criticized and also it is said that it is biased towards the developed nations. So, developed countries, they dominate negotiations and decision making. Voting rights are also held by the developed nations. Several developing countries lack the financial resources and knowledge needed for effective participation in WTO discussions and negotiations. So, people from developing countries and underdeveloped countries, the representatives of developing countries and underdeveloped countries might not be well versed with these terms or terminology, and because of that their effective participation is not possible in WTO discussions and negotiation, and hence all the more it is dominated by developed countries. Policy liberalization in WTO are decided without taking into consideration their adverse effects on developing countries. The WTO has failed to impose discipline on developed nations. So, many of the developed nations, especially the US, they call the shots, and there is no scope of free and fair discussion among the nations. Developing countries have been getting a raw deal from the WTO. So, these were the criticism, and with that we have finished the WTO portion of the economic organization, International Economic Organization. Another very important international organization is, economic organization is World Bank. Now, the World Bank, WTO as well as the IMF, as we have discussed in our previous lecture, that they were the outcome of the Bretton Woods conference only. And the basic purpose was reconstruction of war shattered world economies, that is after World War II it was needed to come out with such institutions which can help in rebuilding the economies which were shattered because of World War II. So, World War II affected manufacturing and infrastructural facility of various economies. Institutions were hence required for the reconstruction of war shattered world economies and development of agricultural and industrial sector. At that time, both developed, underdeveloped nations, western world, eastern world, everybody were cause of concern because World War II has affected almost all economies. International Monetary and Financial Conference was held at Bretton Woods, New Hampshire in July 1944. The outcome of Bretton Woods Conference in 1944 are the establishment of three institutions, that is the World Trade Organization, which we have already discussed. Previously it was GATS and then it became WTO, and we had a detailed discussion in the previous lecture. Then the another body was International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, popularly known as IBRD, and international IBRD is also the World Bank, and then International Monetary Fund, that is IMF. Now, the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, that is IBRD, and International Monetary Fund IMF, they became operational in 1946. And IBRD was the original World Bank. Nowadays, we call it as World Bank. The IBRD was established with the original mission of financing the reconstruction efforts of war-torn European nations following World War II. So, in 1960, the International Development Association IDA was established to serve as the bank's concessional lending arm and provide low and no cost finance and grants to the poorest of developing countries as measured by gross national income per capita. So, how the loans are disbursed we will discuss later on. So, for now we can understand that International Development Association was established for the purposes of lending to the member nations. Now, the World Bank Group was established because in its ambit 5 international organizations were formed that may leverage loans to developing countries. So, it is the largest and best known development bank in the world and an observer of at the United Nations Development Group. The bank is headquartered in Washington DC in the United States. The bank's mission or stated mission is to achieve the twin goals of ending extreme poverty and building shared prosperity. So, when we talk about poverty, it is most of the time those nations like the nations in Asia and Africa and some of the nations in South America, and also share the prosperity. All the member nations can share the prosperity. So, this was the basic motto of World Bank Group. As we said that when it became World Bank Group, under it, it has 5 organizations which have been established over time. We have already discussed the first 2, that is the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development IBRD in 1944 as an outcome of the Bretton Woods Conference. Then came International Development Association IDA in 1960 for disbursement of loans or lending purposes. Then the third was International Finance Corporation IFC 1956, International Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes 1965, Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency MIGA, that is in 1988. So, these are the 5 World Bank which constitutes the World Bank Group. Now, the first 2 that we have initially discussed, that is IBRD and IDA, are sometimes collectively referred to as the World Bank. They provide loans and grants to the governments of low and middle income countries for the purpose of pursuing economic development. So, initially it was for reconstruction of war shattered countries, but nowadays we are only talking about more about providing grants or loans to the governments of low and middle income countries for economic development. Now, what are these activities for which the loans may be given? So, these activities include fields such as human development, that in the education and health sector, agriculture and rural development, environmental protection, infrastructure, large industrial construction projects, governance like anti-corruption, legal institutions development. For all these purposes, the loans may be given by the World Bank Group. The IBRD and IDA provide loans at preferential rates to member countries as well as grants to the poorest countries. Loans and grants for specific projects are often linked to wider policy changes in the sector or the country's economy as a whole. So, when an economy is shifting from one sector to another, more to the another sector, then more of loans or grants are needed and World Bank provides those type of loans and grants. So, the World Bank Group is recognized as a leading funder of even climate investments in developing countries. It finances its activities from the shares its members hold as well as borrowing on international capital markets by issuing World Bank bonds. It provides financial services as well as strategic coordination and information services to its borrowing member countries. Now, what are the objectives of World Bank? So, the objectives are first of all assist reconstruction and development of the territories of its member countries by facilitating the investment of capital for productive purposes. So, initially it was assisting reconstruction in war shattered countries, later on in all type of low and mid income countries. Promote foreign private investments by means of guarantees or through participation in loans and other investments made by private investors. So, it is promoting foreign private investment as well. When private capital is not available on reasonable terms, to make loans for productive purposes out of its own capital or out of funds raised by it from other sources. So, if private capital is not there to invest in a poor country, say, then World Bank gives loans on its own for the economic growth of that country. To promote the long range balanced growth of international trade and the maintenance of equilibrium in the balance of payments of members by encouraging international investments for productive purposes. So, balanced growth, equilibrium in balance of payment, these are maintaining this in member nations is another objective. So, what are the focus areas of World Bank? We have already discussed that in where World Bank gives loans. So, but the focus specifically is on public health and education, reduction in poverty, environmental protection, development of private business, improvement in standard of living in member nations, strengthening the ability of members to deliver quality services with efficiency and transparency. The activities and operations of World Bank. So, World Bank performs different activities or operations. Basically, since it is a bank, then naturally it will be involved in borrowing as well as lending. So, borrowing and lending is the major operations. Beside that, it also gives specialized services to different sectors. So, let us discuss the activities or operations of World Bank then. So, specifically it performs the following activities: borrowing activities, lending activities, technical and advisory activities and other miscellaneous activities. So, to begin with, borrowing operations or activities of World Bank. Borrowing is an important activity of the bank with the following features: creating funds or resources for lending, since from where it will lend. When it will borrow from somewhere or create a fund, then only it can lend. So, borrowing is the first and foremost the most important activity of World Bank. Borrowing can be medium term and long term basis from the international capital market. Borrowing instruments are central bank facility and US dollar dominated facility of the member countries. So, we will discuss how much a country can borrow later on. Borrowing can be done under currency swap agreements and discount net programs. World Bank borrows from commercial banks and other financial institutions with the help of floating rate notes. Then comes the lending operations or activities of World Bank. World Bank can lend funds to its member countries. Some of the important considerations are as follows. So, World Bank lends from its own resources most of the time. It funds from the resources borrowed by the bank in the market of the member countries. The bank may guarantee the loans that are raised by the member countries from various other sources. There is a limitation that the total amount outstanding of guarantees, participation in loans and direct loans made by the bank shall not be increased at any time. So, a balance has to be maintained. Then there are certain principles of lending. Repayment prospects of loans as indicated by the borrowing country, the natural resources, its existing productive plant capacity to exploit the resources and operate the plant, its past debt record. So, it is not that a country can keep on taking loan from World Bank. It has this is with par with its natural resources, productive plant capacity as well as past debt record. All these are taken care of while disbursing loans to any country. Then projects of high priority and economically and technically sound projects are to be financed. Productive projects, what are those projects? Power, transport and other basic utilities which contribute to economic development. Lending is to be done to meet only the foreign exchange content of a project, and the borrowing country should mobilize its domestic resources. The borrowing country is expected to buy machinery etc. for the project from the cheapest possible market subject to satisfactory performance. So, if you are getting the fund, then naturally there are certain rules to be followed. So, you while utilizing that fund. So, if for a project you have to buy machinery, then you will look for the cheapest possible market. The World Bank maintains continuous relations with the borrowing country to monitor the progress of the project. Local private enterprise is also promoted. World Bank also provides funds under certain important facilities like structural adjustment facility, enhanced structural adjustment facility and special action programs. Now, the third activity is technical and advisory activities of World Bank. So, World Bank facilitates technical and advisory assistance to its member countries, which includes plan the developmental program with assessment of the need and economic resources, facilitates survey missions for national resources in order to formulate policies for the long term development of member countries. Establishment of the Economic Development Institute to provide training to the senior officials of the less developed countries. And other operations of World Bank are, the bank shall have the power to buy and sell securities it has issued or has guaranteed or in which it has invested with the approval of members affected. So, first is buying and selling of securities. To guarantee securities in which it has invested for the purpose of facilitating their sale, to borrow the currency of any member with the approval of that member, to buy and sell such other securities as the directors by 3/4 majority of the total voting rights may deem proper for the investment of all or part of the special reserve. Now, coming to the membership of World Bank. Any country can take membership of IBRD or World Bank by signing the charter of the bank and can become its subscriber. All member countries must fulfill their responsibility to the IBRD or the membership can be suspended. So, if you do not abide by the agreements of IBRD or World Bank, then your membership can be suspended. Each member state of IBRD should also be a member of IMF. Here, whenever we are saying IBRD, it is nothing but World Bank only. So, the IBRD has 189 members for now at present. Member countries are 189, while the second unit, that is International Development Association, has 174 members. Now, finally in this chapter we will discuss the organization structure of IBRD or World Bank. So, this is the organization structure. So, there is board of governor, then executive directors are there, and then different departments are there, finance, operation, economic, staff development and secretariat. All these departments presidents are there. So, coming to first we will discuss the top level governance of IBRD, that is board of governors. The highest authority composed of one governor from each member country, typically a finance or development minister, and they meet once a year. Then there is a board of directors. There are 25 executive directors who oversee the daily business, including approving loans and policies. 5 largest shareholders appoint an executive director, while the others are elected by other member countries. Then the presidents who chair the board of governors and the board of directors, and is responsible for the overall management of World Bank Group, as all the other departments are under the president. So, other departments are under operational structure of the IBRD. The president oversees daily operations and the overall direction of the organization. The executive directors work on site and are responsible for approving loans, policies, budgets and country assistance strategies. World Bank Group is composed of, we already discussed that 5 institutions are there, like IBRD, IDA, then IFC, MIGA and ICSID. So, they are also part of the operational structure of IBRD or World Bank. So, let us summarize this discussion. The benefits of WTO are reduction in tariff and non-tariff barriers, economic growth, improvement in economic relations and settlement of trade disputes. The positive impact on developing countries are expansion of trade and improve investment measures. So, when we talk about the negative impact of WTO on developing countries, these are slashing down of subsidy, marginalizing domestic industry and discouraging research and development. WTO is criticized as developed countries dominate negotiations and decision making. Coming to the World Bank or International Bank for Reconstruction and Development and IMF, they were established at the Bretton Woods Conference in 1944. IBRD is also known as World Bank, and it is for financing and the reconstruction of war-torn European nations after World War II. There are 5 organizations under it, like IBRD, IDA, then IFCI, then ICSID and MIGA. So, we have already discussed all that. Then World Bank performs the borrowing activities, lending activities, technical and advisory activities and other activities. Any country can take membership of World Bank by signing the charter of the bank and can become its subscriber. The organization structure of World Bank consists of top level like governors, board of directors, presidents, and at operational level executive directors are also there. So, these are certain references. C.B. Gupta's book is there, Sumati Verma, then EPG Pathshala also have important references, then Chaturvedi and others, and Hill and Hult is there. Thank you, students.